I'm Coach K, and I'm going to take you through some techniques on how to render a canvas backpack. And it will kind of highlight how we can depict fabric with just the use of markers and Prismacolor. But before I jump into my perspective view, I'm making a few little notes just as an orthographic front view of maybe the overall form that I want the bag to take, and a couple of little details just for reference. But as we start on so many different perspective view of products, we want to establish a good perspective. So you can see I've lightly drawn in my vanishing lines, and I really started off with two ellipses that were tilted towards each other, and that kind of reflects the tapered lines of the bag that you see in the orthographic view. Really from there, it's just placing in little details. This would act as an early concept sketch where I'm exploring different materials, I'm exploring different details, zippered pockets, branding, the badge placement, maybe a protective rubber piece on the bottom that I sketched in there. Here I'm showing an action arrow. I'm not sure if I really want to show the bag open at this point. That might be a supplemental sketch that I add down the road to better explain the functionality. So that would be what we call an explanatory sketch. This sketch itself will just be more a concept sketch showing the basic overview of the design, including some color suggestions that will come later with the marker. So along with some of the detailing that I'm trying to incorporate here, I'm also going to include some stitching, and that's an indication immediately that we're dealing with fabric as opposed to any other kind of formed material or an injection molded piece. There's clearly an association with stitching that it is fabric. Now, we don't know exactly what kind of fabric, but that can be added with some notes, maybe even with some texture variation. So in this case, I'm putting in some mesh material, so an elastomeric sketch material that you see on backpacks quite a bit. So it's kind of an expandable pocket that's easily accessible on the outside of the backpack. Then on the bottom, I'm going to give an indication of a rubber pad type of material. Again, I don't know specifically what the material is, but it's padded. It will protect the backpack when I set it on the ground. And it's just a suggestion of some functionality that we may want to incorporate as we get more into the refinement stage. So now I started off, unfortunately, I grabbed a marker that was dying and was kind of dry, so I'm going back over it now with a newer marker, and you can see that the marker application is a little bit different than I normally do, in the sense that it's kind of uneven, but that also is representative of how fabric behaves. So that's one nice thing about doing a bag design that's made out of canvas material or leather, whatever it may be, that the fabrics don't behave perfectly. And so as we sketch, I'm coming in here, I'm not using any guides. I'm allowing the pen and the markers to kind of adapt to the form that the fabric would take, the bends, the folds, the pleating, whatever that may be. But it makes the sketching a little bit more easy, and actually a little bit more enjoyable, because you're not really hung up on having to resort to using guides or anything of that nature. So you can see how I applied the orange color. I just distributed some orange around the product. I didn't want to get kind of too carried away with color. I just want to indicate a color accent, maybe something that would enhance the notion of a trim material, kind of an inside outside fabric surprise, which is always kind of interesting and nice with products, to have a surprise element as you open something. Here I'm distributing a little bit of the darker warm gray marker between the pad, the badge, and the bracket holding the lower strap, the waist strap or the shoulder strap of the bag. But otherwise, I'm just going in. I'm being fairly fast, very fluid here with the marker. And again, I'm not really concerned about trying to get something that's very even because it's fabric. And as I explained, it doesn't really behave that way. So I'm able to work very fast and efficiently here. So I'm indicating maybe how the form and the fabric can be broken up, some zippered areas with little pull tabs for the zippers. Just these little details can go a long way in bringing that implied realism to the concept, even though it's very, I mean, I would call this a rough sketch. This is not a very refined sketch. It's something that you want to generate and be able to show and, you know, maybe to your design team, but it may not be suitable to put in front of the client. It just depends on, you know, who the audience is. So now it's just line work and kind of cleaning things up, because again, my marker application was pretty rapid, pretty fast. And so now, I mean, I do that because I know, and I know that I can go back in and clean it up with my finer nibbed pens or pencils, depending on the medium that I'm using. And so I don't really get hung up. I don't try to overwork things too much. I just let the sketch kind of speak for itself as an early concept sketch. It's that fine line between implied realism and concept. I like emphasizing the fact that it's an unrefined, unresolved concept sketch. It's a sketch that I can put in front of somebody and elicit some kind of reaction, some kind of feedback that will maybe launch me into generating more ideas. So here, I'm just trying to create a little bit of contrast, maybe create a little bit of a shadow line on that recessed surface. On the straps, you can see I just do a very stylized kind of fading out of the strap. I don't need to render the whole strap because there's really not a whole lot of detail to that, at least at this point. There may be down the line, there may be some kind of special stitching on the inside of that strap, I'm not sure. So I'm putting in a little bit of treatment on the badge, a little bit of highlight, even on, you've seen me do some highlights on surfaces before that wouldn't necessarily have strong highlights, and this is another instance where rubber really wouldn't have a big highlight, but the white Prismacolor really helps distinguish between the surfaces, and it just pops it out a little bit more. So again, going back into my shadow areas here, creating a little bit more contrast so it pops off the page a little bit better. Now's the tricky part, right? You get this far in the sketch and the tendency is to keep working and overwork, and I'm guilty of that as much as the next guy, but I'm really trying to refrain from overworking this sketch. Here I'm enhancing that mesh material a little bit more. I'll probably even go in with a white Prism and highlight that a little bit more than I have already. Using a little bit darker orange to highlight certain areas. Putting some more contrast on those fasteners, or the zipper pulls, excuse me. I'll throw in a little faux shadow just to pop it off the page a little bit and frame it. Heavier line weight, getting towards the end, and distributing that around. Again, no guides at this point. It's just allowing the pen to kind of follow the free lines of the fabric. Contrast in those grooves kind of indicates some kind of a durable, protective aesthetic. And of course, I always finish off with my notes, which are critical, understanding that I may not be in front of everyone presenting this quick little sketch, so I need to indicate what my intentions are so that people will be able to get that information on their own when I'm not present. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think what I'll do is I'll probably go back in, and on my action arrow, I think I'm going to highlight that a little bit, because I'm not rendering the open flap, and I'm not rendering the compartment that is exposed by the open flap, but the arrow is an indication that maybe we could have something that folds out and exposes kind of a cavity for storage. And so that can be addressed, as I said earlier, in a different sketch, maybe an exploded view, or we break out we show all the flaps open. But for now, those are just a few techniques for rendering fabric, and I'll see you in the next video.